to do a quick introduction for everyone here on the panel, and then we're going to get right into the conversation and ask them how they're using technology, what are some of the trends that they see, and I'm sure they'll share some tips with you as you think about how to apply technology to your business, or, as Keontae said earlier, if you're an entrepreneur, how to apply technology to the projects that you may be working on within an organization. So here we have on the panel Ursula Spencer. She's Chief Technology Officer at Dope Nerds, which uses XR, VR, and AI for workforce development. We have Eric Brown, who is a strategic technologist. He's the founder of ELVTE Consulting and has also had a strong career at Microsoft. We have Arion Long. She is the Chief Estrogen Officer at Femly, an eco-friendly period care company. And we have Bianca Jackson, Chief Innovation Officer at BrickRose Exchange, a leader in metaverse and virtual events. Give our panel a round of applause. Okay, Arion, I want to start with you. At Femly, you have developed a delivery system for your eco-friendly products. Would love for you to tell us how you developed this technology, how AI is integrated into it, and how it's actually delivering value for the customers that you serve.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So, raise your hand if you are a woman who has been in a restroom and has seen a stainless steel feminine hygiene dispenser where you usually put your quarters in and it spits out disappointment. Okay, so it's like everybody here with a vagina. So I discovered that, one, these machines weren't necessarily working for all. And that was because there is a concept called period poverty, where it states that there are people who maybe can't afford it or are dealing with life issues where feminine care access is an issue. Simultaneous to that, I had started Femly after being diagnosed with a tumor and discovering the chemicals in most of the popular products on shelves. So when I went to the restroom, I always imagined that I would innovate in the dispenser space, but what I didn't account for was the fact that most sensors on hand dryers and faucets use AI that doesn't detect black and brown skin. So when I discovered that, I decided to create a smart touchless dispenser that works for anyone of any complexion and allows them to wave hello and get free feminine care. And how we're using AI is that in every Femly dispenser, when you discover us in the bathroom, there is a QR code that leverages AI to manage inventory. So we're making life easier for the corporations, for the janitorial teams and more, but then for the end user who is walking up to it to get their products, we're leveraging AI to provide health education, combating reproductive illnesses, maternal mortality, and more. So AI is very ingrained in what we do, but because I'm a hardware founder, I think that sometimes the perception of how we're leveraging technology is hard for folks to grasp. But if you think about it, it's very easy. I'm building a product that 51% of the world's population requires.
Yeah, and I think that is incredibly important as we're thinking about technology. Sometimes we hear these tech buzzwords and the hype around technology gets detached from what can be actual practical applications that can be helpful for a business. It sounds like the AI is helpful for you on the back end in terms of inventory management. And of course, if you're able to manage your inventory better, that means that you can ensure that you actually have products available for women when they're coming in to use your products. And so that's a great practical use application. Ursula, I want to come to you next. Dope Nerds has developed GovCon AI to make the government contracting process better. You also use VR and XR tech for workforce development and training. Tell us how you're using technology to deliver for your clients. And Aaron, if you don't mind passing down the mic, thank you.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having us today, and I love your question and how you're kicking it off. So we use virtual reality and AI, not in a unique way, and in a way in that for virtual reality, most people understand it for entertainment and gaming. But they don't realize how powerful that technology is as a learning tool. How when you're fully immersed in an experience that you actually retain 75 to 90% of that information when you're immersed in it. And that's not a dope nerds thing, that is studies, international studies upon studies that have shown that. And so the way that we leverage it or to deliver the future in learning is we have experiences from everything from mental wellness and mindfulness, so being able to meditate inside of VR. And if you've ever meditated, you know that, especially when you're new to that space, it's hard for you to shut your brain off. That's one of the first things you try to do, right? But I want you to try to imagine that inside of virtual reality, it actually, within literally seconds, you're so immersed into the experience and into the mindfulness of that application that you just naturally are focused on your meditative state or your focused state. So that's just one example. On the education side, I want you to try to imagine that currently in a traditional way, we have our books, right? We have our pens, we have our textbooks. I want you to try to imagine a future where the youth is studying marine biology, but they're on a virtual deck, diving off of that deck into a ship, or diving off of that deck into the ocean where they learn about that natural habitat, and they're literally surrounded by the habitat of the ocean. That's how immersive our experiences are. On the AI side, you wouldn't think that those two marry, that you have mixed reality or virtual reality married with artificial intelligence. The application in which we use it is, I want you to, again, imagine that you're inside of VR learning trade skills. So you're interested in construction. Well, now you're fully, right now, think of that liability. You would not take a training on a construction site that knows nothing about heights training, right? Or I would think you wouldn't want to from a liability perspective, or doesn't know how to properly put on their harness, right, on a construction site. Well, now imagine that they are in a fully 3D, true to life scenario where they're able to practice these skills inside of an immersive experience, and then we're using the power of AI to dynamically follow that learner and serve up where they have areas of improvement and how they can then, and how they've progressed along their learning journey. So those are some of the applications.
Yeah, that's great stuff. And I guess if you fall off a skyscraper in virtual reality, you don't actually get hurt. Although I've seen some videos of some people falling when they have the VR headset on.
I want to say that's just for the gram, because there are safety measures inside of VR that allow you not to do that. So that's definitely for the gram.
Okay. Well, great stuff, Ursula. Bianca, I want to go to you. BrickRose Exchange does virtual event production in the metaverse. Explain to us how that works and how technology is really delivering for the organizations you work with.
Sure. So hi everyone. It's working right now. So the first panel that was just here was literally broadcast inside of the metaverse.
So we were in the metaverse just a few minutes ago?
We were just in the metaverse. So there's a ton of people right now in a virtual environment that we built specifically for entrepreneurship. And so right now there should be a young woman who is the youngest esports gaming founder in Africa. So she's speaking at this very moment. Her name is T.H.E.M. And so she's from Zambia. And so that's what it looks like. One, being able to have hybrid events where you're having one part in person, another part on, virtually. We actually did a kickoff yesterday of just getting people's avatars together, and that was quite fun, as you can imagine. But what we're starting to see, or what we saw, especially during the pandemic, was that people were looking for new and innovative ways to meet, right? And so, how many of you hate Zoom? I know I do, right? You sit there with your camera off, you don't pay attention. And what we found is that as we started to bring events inside the metaverse and people are able to join in, they're able to create avatars that look like them, they're able to do really fun things. And so, for instance, another application is we have a client, Coinbase. Coinbase has multiple, hundreds of employees all over the world. So we actually ran a virtual concert for them. So they had their employees from the Philippines, Ireland, and the United States. And what was really cool about that experience is, of course, we can take the technology across the world, but then it helped us go from a local business to a global business. But also, what was really cool is they actually submitted music from their countries. And so I'm up here listening, like, who picked this song, right? And so people in the space were laughing. But what's really interesting also is to see the impact of music. So Beyonce and Rihanna ruled that party no matter who was in there. And so we're starting to see how culture translates, how to bring people together, remote employees, employee engagement, student engagement. Like, there's a lot of different applications with doing events and experiences in the metaverse that I was just really shocked and amazed by. And we've actually used these virtual events as a way to open international markets. So our events have already reached the shores of, like I said, Ireland and the Philippines, but we got into South Africa, Rwanda, and Kenya. And right now we're working on 2 projects in Bahamas and Jamaica. So we're going to continue to grow. And it's interesting because most people, they'll ask, well, is this for young people? Because it looks like video games. And you'll be surprised how many young and older people enjoy being in these places and being able to interact with other people. So I'm just really excited for all of you. Hopefully you'll get a chance to kind of go into the metaverse space that was developed, not specifically for this event, it was built for a client. And so the client's in there interacting with other people from this conference too. But I'm just excited about the future and where this is going. Another piece of technology that we've also been using has been AI. So with the project in Jamaica, we've actually developed a GPT that is acting as a digital concierge. So as this event will happen, I want to say December of this year, people can then interact with the AI digital concierge to be able to get information, but then we're building a whole story arc around it. So to kind of, to like really get their attention and bring them into the experience. So all of our stuff literally touches events and experiences and how we show up differently in a way that's unique.
That's incredible. We were all just in the metaverse and looking forward to going back to it sooner rather than later. Eric, let me come to you. So we've just talked about AI, VR, XR, and a range of applications, really interesting technology. I was actually just in Morocco earlier this week, and I did an AI event series, and everyone wanted to know what's the latest AI technological advancement, what are the trends, where are we going in the future? But I had to pause in each one of the conversations and say, don't forget that the technology is cool, but there's humans using the technology. So Eric, you've had a great career using a lot of the technology that's been mentioned here, but you also are a founder yourself. How do we keep the human connection as we are continuing to push forward with some of these really interesting technological applications?
No, I appreciate that question. Hello, everyone. I am one that is naturally curious, have a passion for people, and as a technologist, it's easy to go down the rabbit hole. Here are all the bits and bytes, here are the new features, here's the new API, etc. But I've learned in my journey that you have to center in what I really love you did is, what's the problem? What are you trying to solve? 50% of whatever percentage you said of individuals are having this challenge, and then working from that challenge and being able to ask detailed questions on like, well, why is that a problem? And why is that? And how about this? Or why? And being able to come from a place of empathy to say, all right, what are we really trying to solve for what people? And then let's figure out the technology to be able to help come up with that solution for that community. So I leverage different frameworks, but I would say all of them begins with saying, well, who are the people that we're trying to empower and impact? How are you measuring that today? And then what is the ideal space that you want that experience to be for those individuals? And have that be the centering, anchoring of the journey that you're going as far as innovation.
Yeah, I think that's a really important perspective. One, empathy, so understanding where your potential customers, where your potential users are coming from, their life experience, etc., how they're experiencing whatever the problem is that's being solved. But then two, making sure that you continue to center people as you continue to develop the technology. So now that we've talked a little bit about a range of tech that's out there, let's get a little bit practical here. Would love for a couple of people to chime in on this. When did you first learn about the technology? And Arion, since you have the mic, we can start with you. But when did you first learn about the technology that you're using today? And what was the process taking it from, oh, this is something that's really cool, to something that could actually be helpful with my business?
Sure. So while on the campus of Morgan State University and running amok through Morgan View at 15 years old, I had the goal and aspiration of becoming the next Ben Carson until he opened his mouth. And I thought that I would become a cardiologist, like literally fell in love, met my husband the first day on this campus. And I remember reading about robotics and like the application in medicine and how, you know, folks were starting to do laparoscopic surgeries with AI robots and training the technology on different elements of medicine and like all of the upgrades and like latest research that would come out every year. So that was really what initially piqued my interest. When I started Femly, we were a D2C, direct-to-consumer company. So we were shipping, you know, feminine care to your door every month. We did that to the tune of $1 million with me as the only employee. And then I discovered that, like, I was burnt out. I was, like, fighting, and I think we actually met because I applied for Shark Tank back then in those earlier years, but I was burnt out, and I think that one of the things that came about that in the application of technology was the iOS 14 update. So if y'all aren't well versed in what the iOS 14 update did, prior to this phone update, you were allowed to run advertisements and target people for the tune of like $1 per customer. So for me to get a customer on my website that would pay me $20, I had to spend only $1. But with iOS 14, they said, no, we're gonna protect people's data and privacy. We're not gonna let you see how they're using the internet. And that same customer then cost me $40 to acquire. So I pivoted my entire company, and I realized that if we were going to survive, one, we would have to use AI, leverage technology and machine learning, but also pivot our interests so that we're focusing B2B. It is so much easier to spend a deal of energy on attracting a business-to-business customer. We went from feminine care to your door to selling $1,000 machines to organizations that pay us, I don't know, $10,000 to $500,000 for one period care deal. Also at a time where there are now 63 laws requiring free feminine care in bathrooms, and I'm the only cute little black face with minority and women certification. So I think that, you know, there's a lot. But I do encourage people, especially if you are non-technical. When I was on this campus, I was taking like pre-med classes, interior design, like I did whatever really made me feel good. And I very much was a non-technical founder, didn't have an engineering background, who kind of Googled and found the people that could help me build and apply this technology in a manner that is actually in demand.
Got it. Wow, that's an incredible story, and definitely congrats to you on not only identifying the problem and developing a solution, but also pivoting based on the market and changes in the market. That's where a lot of businesses fall to the wayside. That's where a lot of businesses close, because you had significant success, $1 million business, doing it one way. Something changes, and you got to figure out, okay, how do I put myself and my business not just in a position to be successful from a business standpoint, but how do I continue to deliver for the consumers that really need the products that you're delivering? So really, really interesting story. Thank you. Bianca, I would love for you to chime in on this really quickly. When did you first learn about the metaverse, and how did it go from, again, being something cool to now something that is really driving value for the customers that you're working with?
I love when I get this question, because I always tell people it started with slicing fruit. Now that might sound crazy, right? So one day I'm leaving the office and I see these guys playing Fruit Ninja in VR, right? And so I walk over and I have the most curious questions. I'm like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, we're doing research. And so at the time I was a project manager at USA Today, and they asked me if I wanted to try it out. So I put it on. Let me tell you, this was when VR was connected to your computer, so I'm sweating profusely, trying to slice this fruit, rolling on the floor, all the things. And I had such a great time, but I think what I did next impressed them. So I took off the headset, I began to ask them tons of questions, just everything that I could think of, and then I leave the office not even thinking anything of it. I come back in probably a week later. My boss goes, "You've been reassigned." And I said, "Reassigned where?" She said, "The emerging tech team." And I said, "You mean a Fruit Ninja team?" And so we both start laughing, but literally that was the start, and that was in 2016. So this was way before, this was probably around the time, probably a few months later, Ready Player One came out. And while I was a project manager there, we built 3 different products. By the time we got to the 3rd product, we built something that actually won a Pulitzer Prize. Big deal, right? Because in a media company, most people thought we were crazy. We had an internal game development team, and I was in charge of that team. So they were using video game design principles, applied it to media, and we created something the world had never seen. The experience was literally a life-scale model of the US-Mexico border and telling the stories of migrants from how they go through Mexico, try to get to the border. So we talked about not just quote-unquote illegal immigrants jumping over a fence, but more of the stories around border control, eminent domain, endangered species, drug, rape, unfortunately, like all these things that didn't normally make the narrative of the news. So at the height of my career, I was like, all right, so what else is there for me to do? Quit my job, start my own thing, right? And so I came to Baltimore with this really cool idea, but I let the environment itself it did talk me out of it. I scaled it down. I just focused on the art part and not the tech part. And so in the middle of the pandemic, we had a choice to make. We had a foot traffic business with no foot traffic. So instead of them focusing on virtual events in Zoom, like I mentioned before, because I hate Zoom, I know a lot of people do, I was like, well, what would happen if we started having events in virtual reality? And then that took off. The very first event that we did, we had an art show with women artists in Baltimore, and then we had art collectors from around the world come in world to meet them and to buy art. One of the paintings actually showed up to her house. And so that was the start of something really brilliant, unique, timely, and at the time, Facebook changed their name to Meta. So then everybody was doing these searches, metaverse, this and that. And so we just kind of went from there. So from that point up until now, we've been recognized by American Express, Comcast, Meta, the company itself, gotten a lot of grants for the work that we're doing, not just for events, but also our community impact. And so when people ask me this question of like, how did you get here? I'm like, it started with slicing food.
Well, what an incredible, yes, give her a round of applause. What an incredible story. I have a follow-up, but I want to get Ursula and Eric in here before. Two of our founders here have described how they went from learning about this cool tech to actually applying it. Would love for you two to talk about any mistakes that maybe you've made or seen other people make as they try to take cool or interesting technology and apply it to the business space. Ursula, let's start with you.
I love this question because all of us on the panel know as founders, there's a laundry list that we could probably identify as mistakes, but I want to kind of tweak the narrative a little bit, that they're lessons. I think going into, so just a quick backstory. So I am a technologist and been in tech since, taught myself how to hack at 11 years old. First tech company at 21, so a nerd, like truly a nerd, right? And truly geek out over the tech. But that can be also a slight hindrance in that, and I think Arion, you mentioned it earlier, going down the rabbit holes, right? Thinking that you can't always leverage tech to solve a problem. It does require human intelligence to then deploy and implement that technology, right? And that goes for AI as well. I think folks have this thought that, all right, AI, two things. AI is gonna solve everything, but also it's gonna take everybody's jobs. And that's just not the case because it requires the human side of it to even get it deployed. So with that, some of the challenges and lessons learned is I probably would have strategized a tad differently in that with virtual reality, as it's been mentioned, entertainment and gaming are sexier. Education and training is not necessarily sexy to people or to be
But the contracts are sexy.
The contracts are extremely sexy, but I digress. And so I probably just like to market would have did the strategy a little bit differently, but I don't see it necessarily as a mistake as much as I just see it as a lesson. And it enabled us, as it's already been mentioned, to pivot Dope Nerds from being able to stand up a nonprofit to do outreach for K-12 middle school, high school students so that they can realize a future that's brighter through technology, and then focus on B2B and B2G, which we know, which is how GovCon AI came about to solve the problem of how arduous and very British special forces government contracting can be for startup and small businesses as well as enterprises.
Yeah, well, as a small business owner that's done some government contracting, I can tell you I've been through the ropes course, special forces, whatever you want to call it.
Paperwork.
Yeah, to figure out that process. So thank you for creating something to simplify it for myself and others. Eric, what lessons have you learned? What have you seen clients do that maybe people here could learn from, or what have you learned in your own journey as an entrepreneur and technologist that might be helpful for the audience as they start or continue their journeys in tech?
Yeah, a few things come to mind, but I think I want to double click on what was mentioned around technology is important. It's definitely something that can drive advancement, but you also have to invest just as much in the human stack and building the right relationships. And oftentimes, as one who's very curious and loves the latest and greatest, I found myself with clients, but also within those organizations, you're talking to the same people. And so you got a whole bunch of innovators and future thinkers in the room saying, oh yeah, we're great. And then like you go 6 months, like, well, how did that project translate to the rest of the organization? How did that project translate to getting the funding? And I realized that you have to be sure that you have all the stakeholders involved in the entire process to make it sustainable. And so one of my lessons learned from my own business, but also for helping clients, is making sure that in initial phases, when you're coming up with that problem to solve, that you have a lot of the right stakeholders in mind, and you're able to measure what that problem looks like. So as you go down the rabbit hole of all the cool things, you're mapping it back to something that's tangible, because you can go down the whole thing, and then 6 months or a year later, you're like, well, where did that go? Well, we're still playing. And so, yeah.
Pass it over to Eric. She had something.
Okay, look to the side and tell your neighbor, focus and traction. For me, I think those are two mistakes that not only I made, but like I watched, because during the pandemic, I became an angel investor. And I watched other founders make the mistake of not having focus and not pursuing traction. When I decided to raise money for Femly at a time where there were only 37 Black women, it took 4 phone calls and I got $1 million. And I was like breastfeeding a newborn in 2020, but it took those 4 phone calls because I was laser focused on what we were trying to do. And it was such an easy sell to investors when they're like, hey, what's your revenue? What's your customer acquisition score? And I was able to say, 1.2 million, we're acquiring customers for $5 right now, they're bringing us 500, etc. Like, the biggest mistake that I think that anybody can do is not have focus. If your potential customer, whether that be B2B or direct to consumer or a corporate stakeholder, can't get to know you for like one specific thing, you're not focusing your investment in yourself, so why should I focus my investment in you? You can't be a jack of all trades, and I think that specifically in technology, this is not the sector where you could be like, the Jamaican uncle that's like doing the cars on the side, but is doing this as the day job. And I think the other thing with traction, a lot of times people assume that they need money to make sales, and you don't need money. Are you showing up to engagements like this? Are you attending maybe local meetups? Do you know everyone at the Baltimore City Chamber of Commerce? Do you know what their budget is? what their contracting looks like, who they're partnering with. Like, much of it is coming outside and like forming artful collaborations with people who can introduce you to technology and other ideas and other markets that you may not necessarily know about. So focus and traction.
Great advice, great advice. Yeah, round of applause for that. Something that I often say to entrepreneurs when we're talking about Shark Tank is, traction can look different for every business, but you gotta make sure that you articulate it in some way, no matter what it means for your business, whether that's community, as you said, or intellectual property, or actually having revenue from sales. So, great stuff. Our conversation, unfortunately, is coming to a close here in just another few minutes. I do want to get a couple of audience questions, so think about questions that you might have for these panelists as we close. Before then, and Bianca, I think it's great that you have the mic in your hand. My final question here is, you were, and your news organization, were really early adopters when it comes to this VR tech, even pre-metaverse. How important is it to be an early adopter, or can you adopt technology, learn about technology after the fact, and still really reap the benefits? Start with you, and maybe we'll have a couple others chime in before we go to audience for a couple quick questions.
So before you added that last piece to it, I was gonna say both, but with that last piece, I'm gonna say early adopter, right? Even though when I left my job in 2017, going out to market and getting people even interested in VR was hard. But the good thing is I was able to see the landscape, the research, have my network and continue to build it. So I had been building in stealth mode all this time until it became a thing. And when it became a thing, I was able to run out the gate with it, right? And so I think that if you have a heads up on something that is new and emerging is coming, and you can see all the potential benefits of it, keep working on that thing in stealth mode until it makes sense to like release it, so that you already have the traction and the focus with it, and also the reputation to go along with it.
Got it. Ursula, do you want to chime in really quickly? And let's, anyone have a quick question for the panel before we close? Sure, I'll go up to this brother while you answer that quick question.
I think it's a mix of both. I feel like there's it kind of happens in webs and flows. So you have the hype crowd, and that's everyone that kind of jumps on the tech, right? I kind of, depending on what that technology is, I would say let the hype crowd kind of go through it first, get the lessons learned, and you learn those lessons as well, right? So follow those trends, pay attention to what problems it's solving, or you identify the potential gaps or risks with that particular technology, and what problems you can solve out of learning from what the first ones that went in. Then in parallel to that, figure out like how you can innovate or make it, or how it can be transformative for the problems that you're solving. So I think it's a combination of both, and you can kind of win at using both tracks.
Got it. Well, brother, give us your name. If you're a student, tell us your educational affiliation,
Yes.
and then ask the question.
Yes. So my name is Elijah James. Yes, as you go here to, I'm just going to project. My name is Elijah James. I'm a student here at Morgan State University, studying business with a minor in finance. And my question is for anyone who wants to answer. With tech and innovation, something that's constantly changing and innovating, how often are you guys doing research to kind of keep your business advantage?
I am a lifelong learner, and I think that things change, and you have to be able to do the research yourself or be in community with individuals that are able to give you different ideas. And so I think it's something that you have to intentionally do. And at the rate of change now, I think we have to be more intentional about learning and getting different perspectives in real time, because it's changing the market.
I tell people that, like, I don't have an MBA. I wasn't able to, like, go ahead and do the grad thing at Yale or Harvard, but that's who I hire, and they report to me. Growth and learning, yeah, that's a flex. I'm a Leo. I feel like growth and learning is constant. There is going to be, and forgive me, but this is venture for them, this is a Black establishment, there is going to be some shit that business school cannot teach you. there have been obstacles and things that I had to overcome that I realized that no type of textbook education could have prepared me for. Language is one of them. Like, we often joke about, like, what's good could mean, are you straight? What's going on? Is the food all right at the function? Like, there's so much cultural and societal nuance that we bring, especially if you're a minority or a female founder. And so learning is constantly evolving, and I think that watching the market, watching policy, which politics is very like antiquated and boring for me, has been interesting because I'm almost able to identify where the funding will come from, what innovation will come down the line, and to be honest, what potential acquirers of my company would want to see if they're going to pay me the $500 million that I'm demanding. So I think that, you know, don't ever stop learning, but also partner and identify the key players in your ecosystem that kind of have this growth mindset. If you tell me the 5 people you hang out with, I can tell you exactly who you are, but that's for a reason. Who are you aligning with, and how are they kind of pouring into you to almost watch those blind spots and knowledge gaps that you may not have? And so this one has, like, I built a whole ChatGPT to help people create their business plan because I'm now backed by Google and Beyonce and I don't have enough time to get on the phone with folks. But I said, here's a tool I created that will give you the outline and the gate for how I created my business plan, you know? But that's not something I would have been able to do had I not been introduced to the technology.
Great stuff. So unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for today. However, our panel may be available after to connect with you. Thank you to Bianca, Arion, Eric, and Ursula. We learned about some really cool tech, but also how to apply it in practical ways to help build your business and also deliver value for your customers. Again, I'm Brandon Andrews. If you're interested in Shark Tank, visit sharkpitches.biz to apply for season 16. Always looking for more entrepreneurs from our community. Thank you.
Check.